Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show tonight. It is Wednesday evening. We are coming to you at a little bit of an unconventional time because this is a little bit of an unconventional week. The Seattle Seahawks are going early this time around. They are going to be taking on the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow evening. We have the Thursday night game for the second week in a row. So we're going to break it down tonight with Brandon of the Hawks Nest. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Appreciate you having me in.
All right, good to hear. Good to hear. So, let's go ahead and just get right into the news of the week. There isn't a heck of a lot going on. I mean, we're late in the year. There's no more trading. There's not a lot of free agency stuff. So, you got what you got. So basically, if it sounds good to you, I think we should just talk about these injuries for a minute and then swing into this game.
Very important part to what we got to look at with this game, especially this time of year, is the injury situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's mostly good news. We're not going to have Phil Haynes, but I think at this point, most fans are ready to see what we have with Bradford because he's hopefully the future. And at this point, he might be at least as good as Phil Haynes. Like, I don't think you're missing a whole lot going from Haynes to Bradford anymore.
No, and I think this is a situation, as you say, I'm usually a guy, if you're in the thick of it, that I don't want to really try a guy out there to see what I got in him. But in Bradford, because he has given you such good flashes and also the ability to steadily improve throughout the course of the year, it leads you to believe like, well, let's let this ride a little bit. And as you said, too, Haynes is not exactly set a benchmark here for play that's going to be hard for Bradford to clear.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there's that. Walker is doubtful, even though he didn't practice this week. I don't know why we're doing this charade of pretending like he might play when he obviously won't. But yeah, he's technically doubtful. I wouldn't expect him to play, though.
No, and the coaching staff tends to be pretty conservative with injuries anyway. I'm sure here. I don't know. This is a hard one because this injury seems to be a little bit of a different. McCaffrey played through it. He's down by it. It may be even a couple more weeks on it based on some of the stuff I'm reading on. So harder to gauge on this when exactly we're going to get Walker back. But you're going to miss him this week because you see in this Dallas, and we'll sure get to this in the breakdown. You see a lot in this Dallas defense of them getting sucked down and clogged down into those runs, especially, and where having a guy like Walker who can start it on an inside run and then bounce it outside. The Cowboys do a good job of rallying, but sometimes they can over rally, and those corners or safeties can end up losing some of their leverage on a play, especially with a fast back like this, and you don't have that to call upon, which does kind of suck. But he'll be back hopefully before the year ends.
And Derek Young is also doubtful. I mean, obviously, even if he was healthy, he wouldn't be doing that much. And I don't know why they'd bring him back at this point when they're not even going to ask him to do very much when he does come back.
Special teams player at this point, really.
Otherwise, we look pretty good. I think Leonard Williams is going to play. Disley's going to play. Eskridge is actually questionable, even though he didn't practice at all this week. I don't really know what's going on there. But, Eskridge has something Eskridge has something to build on, for the first time in a while. He's got something he can maybe run with here. So hopefully he's actually out there to do it.
Agreed. We're looking for this kid to carve out a role, whatever it may be. Maybe it's going to be far below what we had hoped when he was drafted, but at least just find some kind of use for him. For a guy who everything that they tell us about him is that he has this explosiveness and this ability inside him that can eventually be maybe called upon if he can stay healthy. But the health thing is the key, as he's once again banged up. And as we've seen, he's not a guy that's actually, it sounds like, really easy to able to play through some of these injuries. If he's banged up, he's out. Tends to be how that is with him, at least.
Yeah, and Abe Lucas not listed with any kind of an injury designation whatsoever.
Woo!
So
Let's go.
I think this may be Abe Lucas's first action since week 1. So, hey, I will take whatever news I can get. And at this point, you basically have your originally intended starting offensive line, except for Haynes. And you could just as easily say Haynes got benched for bad performance as anything else. So, I'm not worried about that.
Or that they could have just naturally had a plan in place that they thought they'd have progressed to Bradford by this point in time of the year, and that Haynes was there early on until he could learn the ropes a little bit more, but they knew the upside would be there much more with him than Haynes. At least that appears to me on that to be pretty true. So yeah, this is going to be, and thank God too, Brennan, because Peters had the hand injury last week. You
Right.
might not have really had him full go, and we would have had a full healthy dose of Parsons and Forsythe.
Mhm.
And I don't think that would have gone particularly well.
Yeah, and speaking of Peters, he was actually not listed on the injury report at all this week either, which surprised me because when those old players get hurt, you usually expect
Yeah.
them to just kind of shut it down for a while. But I guess he's okay too, so we might see him some as well. Um, I mean, technically, Bradford is still working through a little bit of an injury, so I guess it's within the realm of possibility we see Peters at right guard, I guess.
Well,
But we'll see.
Pete said he doesn't mind rotating through a game when it
Mhm.
comes to the offensive line. So maybe a bit of all of them kind of shuffling through there a little bit.
Yeah. Only other thing to really note, Cowboys are completely clean on the injury front. They have no injury designations. I'll tell you, I feel like the last 5 games the Seahawks have played, they've been playing teams that are extremely clean on the injury front. Like very little to worry about. Like the Ravens were clean, the Rams were clean going into that game. Washington had like Curtis Samuel, and that's it. I mean, as much as the year started out with a lot of injuries, it seems like it's quieted down a little bit. We're not seeing a lot of significant injuries across the NFL.
Agreed. Yeah, there's a lot of San Francisco in there too. They've gotten a lot healthier as the year's gone on. You might have already mentioned that, but it's been notable that these teams are staying pretty healthy this year. I'm not sure what to make of it. Maybe a little bit of the lack of the physicality and hitting of the sport is not causing as much brutality. Maybe it's the lightening of the load on the practice points as they've gone through in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Mhm. And I think that's really about all we can talk about on that front. Things are looking fairly good for both teams. Obviously, Dallas is in a better spot because they're basically perfect. I mean, they have everything they could want right now. So, but not too bad. So all that's left is the game. All that's left is the actual game. So you cool with just swinging right into this one?
I am. There is one note that's important, of course, on just the injury front with Dallas that is at least a little bit of a somewhat not leveling of the playing field with what we're dealing with our injury situation, but they've got their Uchenna kind of equivalent where they lost Trayvon Diggs for the year. They're a
True.
very talented cornerback that
Hmm.
definitely impacts them.
I mean, they lost him so long ago. It almost kind of just feels like it is what it is there, right? Like,
Mhm.
and they've done a really good job replacing him. Honestly, like most of these games, you wouldn't even notice.
It's true. No, they have done a very good job in what they've done with it. So can't deny that. And they've had a guy emerge from the shadows on that one, but at the same point in time, it is a loss that coming into the year, that's their second most important defensive player.
All right. So, with all that being said, let's open up the book on these Dallas Cowboys. They are 8-3. They are feeling pretty good about themselves. And their season so far has been defined pretty strongly by one very strong trend. They play bad teams and they murder them. They absolutely kill them, get on top of them. They start building and building and building. Oh, there's the defensive touchdown. There's the 80-yard touchdown by CD Lamb in garbage time. And wow, they're winning by 40 points. They've done this over and over again this year. We just saw it on Thanksgiving a week ago. So they are the team that gets on top and then it's over. That's been their modus operandi this whole season.
Absolutely, it has been. And as you said, they're also within that schedule you say is just a lot of these weaker teams in the NFL. The Cowboys very well may be legit right now, but they have not been challenged in their schedule. I would say even in the way that we've been challenged in our schedule. You've got the Giants in the opening week of the season, they crush them. The Jets the next week without Aaron Rodgers, they crush them. They lose to the Cardinals after that, which is the one bad team that got over them. Then they beat the bad Patriots. Then they get completely boat raced by the 49ers on the road. Then they're able to just squeak out a win against the Chargers, who are a little bit hapless this year overall. The Rams, they win big. Stafford has a thumb injury early in that game, and it definitely affects him. Eagles, they lose to, and then they go on these past 3 games, Brendan, and you have the Giants, who now they beat for a second time, Panthers, Commanders. So there has not been the test there on their schedule of this team. Anybody coming into this who says, well, we've got a better chance than we might think if you look at the records and how hot Cowboys are versus how cold we are. And I think it's a valid point to say when you look at their schedule and what they've gone up against, they've been given a very light box. They've been given a 6-man box, Brendan, with a heavy front, with a goal line offense out there. And so it's definitely, I think, putting a little bit of the wind in their sails to a degree. But they are a very well coached team. Quinn's done some really nice work with the defense over there, and McCarthy taking the reins over for the offensive coordinator. What was his? Kellen Moore, who moved on to San Diego, wanted to run the ball a little bit more, wanted to stay a little more consistent in that this year. And indeed, when you watch the Cowboys offense, there does seem to be a little bit more, balance. So, yeah, it is still going to be a tremendously tough battle for us to pull this one off, despite that schedule. But that's got to be a part you look at. Those are a lot of opponents, Brendan, that are, where's the quality win there on that schedule from your perspective,
Yeah, I mean, for my part, I still view this team as kind of fraudulent. I don't buy
Mm,
them. I do think they are, like, to me, they are still the team that was having like a midseason Super Bowl game against the Niners and lost 42-10. Like, to me, that game told me what I need to know about them. And while they're still a good team, I don't think they're an elite team at all. I don't think they're a real threat to win the Super Bowl or even get there this year. So if you're looking for a game in this next month to find a way to win, this is probably it. Like, this is probably the game you can sneak out. I do see a little bit of Mike Tyson in this team. You punch him in the mouth and they get a little bit off kilter, you've got a real shot.
but if you let him go fully crazy Mike opening round on you, where he starts throwing 55 punches in 32 seconds, all with a lot of heaviness to him, they can put you down on the other side of that too.
Oh
I do
yeah.
like that comparison on both sides of it. So yeah, I think that is the case. I don't know if they're fraudulent. They might be. You might be on point with that. I mean, I got to admit, but they have. I will give them this: is that they have taken care of business on the schedule. They didn't just barely slide by the Panthers or the Commanders or the Giants on either time they played them. I mean, they put a 40-0 spot on the Giants in the opening week of the season when they were at their healthiest and they had all of their dogs. And that's I think it is probably indicative that there is some quality there, but how much quality, Brendan? We're going to learn a lot about that this week against when we play them. I think when they get us as a challenge coming into this, whatever challenge we are mustering at this point as a team, going on the road here like this.
Yeah, no, and when I say that, understand, I'm not saying we're better than them or we're definitely going to beat them or anything. I'm just saying I don't think that Cowboys team is a real threat in the postseason to a team like the Niners or even the Eagles. And they
Agreed.
typically do play the Eagles well, but I don't view them in that way. I'm just not there yet. To me, I feel like you just get these very strong statements in some of these games, and they just stick with you. Like what happened against the Niners in week, I think it was 5 or 6, has stuck with me. To me, they're still that team, and I don't think they're a bad team at all. I think they are probably a team that is going to make the playoffs and probably do at least a little bit of damage. But I don't see them as a threat to go to the Super Bowl unless they get the benefit, or maybe they're the beneficiary of tremendous luck, like they get the Niners in the NFC title game, and then Brock Purdy gets hurt again or something.
I was going to say I could see it on a. That's the only way I could see it happening too. Is there being the injury situation versus those other two teams you mentioned, Eagles and Niners. They just have such a better injury situation coming in than them, where they start to both start to feel some of their age and lose a couple of key guys, and that does change the landscape of it at that point. But if it just holds true to how it looks on paper right now, I agree. They're not getting to the conference championship even.
So with that being said, let's start with the defense because I think the defense is a big reason why they front run so well.
Mm-hmm.
The weakness of this Cowboys defense for years has been stopping the run. They've been one of those teams that is really, really good at stopping the pass. They get after the quarterback like few other teams out there. They've got a lot going on in that area. They've obviously had tremendous success from their cornerbacks, be it Diggs before this year and Bland this year. And now they've got Gilmore. Their secondary is really good. But if you can stay in the game enough to run the ball, they've had a problem dealing with that. And this year they drafted Mozzie Smith to do something about that. And he doesn't see the field that much. He doesn't really do a heck of a lot yet. So I think they still have some of those problems. And I think that defines them as a team.
It does. Yeah, I think they're certainly are a team that is not they've cleaned some things up with it. Mozzie, a 52 grade overall by PFF, and he's heavily rotated out, I think, on that defensive line versus other guys they have a little more faith in. So he's not been able to bring what I think they were hoping to get with him, was a guy that, was going to just roll off the truck and be ready to, you take him out of the package and he's good to go as a run stuffing defensive tackle. He may not give us pass rush, but you remove the wrap and all that stuff, and that's what you're getting from him on the defense. And instead, no one's you really haven't gotten that from him, and so that slight hole there does remain a bit. Brendan, they do seem to me too, to get more specific on it, just watching some of the tape, where they do handle the business for the most part on inside runs, especially from under center. This is going to be a game, unfortunately, for those that don't like to see a lot of Charbonnet and shotgun with handoff gives, or attempts out of handoff, with a read option kind of look. You're probably going to get a good amount of those, because I've seen teams, the Eagles did this, for instance, in that game with Jalen Hurts, a lot of out of shotgun, give the run and let the back go up there, make some work at the line, try to take advantage of the Cowboys, because what they want to do, Brendan, is they want their pass rushers to get upfield. Parsons and Williams and Armstrong, these guys are just trying to get the football field. And so you can kind of run past them as they're on their way to trying to get to the quarterback as a running back on those plays a little bit. But as we've seen, it's not always been our best plays to utilize in the ground game. The place I see, though, that they're most vulnerable on the tape, to me, is getting to the edges if you can. And unfortunately, in a game like this, you don't have Walker to do it. So you're going to have to maybe try to manufacture it with some more of those kind of fly sweeps to Eskridge if you can, or see if Charbonnet, who is relatively, quick, he's a bigger back inside, but he can do the outside stuff. Maybe try to use him on some of those runs too, as you can, because that does seem to be as well, where they'll lose a little bit of their edge integrity out there with guys just not quite setting the edge. And remember, with Parsons, he is a guy that is more of a linebacker to edge guy, which suits him really well as a pass rusher. But if you put him up there against those other guys like your Bosa's and your Myles Garrett, who he fits up around as far as in that hemisphere, he's the guy that doesn't quite set the edge or hold down the line as well against the run as those other guys.
Yeah, it feels like there are things you can do with Parsons to neutralize him that don't exist for guys like Bosa and Garrett. I will say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can kind of go at him a little bit in the ground game, test his ability to root down at times there. He's got a lot of effort, but again, there's a little bit of size issues and stuff. Not size issues, but he's just a little lighter there at times. You can it feels like watching it, you can kind of move him off the spot from time to time. He's very dangerous as a pass rusher, and as much as dangerous as anybody in this league, including Bosa. But that would be the one place I'd say. Now, the only problem is, Brennan, of course, we don't have a real keen want to try to get to the outside edge at times from a defensive standpoint, offensive standpoint. Even when we had Walker in the game, he had to kind of sometimes manufacture it by starting inside and then sliding out with some of his dancing. And it's not really Charbonnet's game as much, and the team doesn't like to do it as much. And even with Eskridge in the lineup, we don't like to run it as much as we saw last week. So it's maybe me hoping on something that they would try to utilize here, because I think if you try to just hammer it up the middle in this defense, if they know especially that that's your tendency to do so, that is where they've been a little bit stifling in the run defense game, from my perspective.
Yeah, they haven't really lost that much when Van Der Esch went on IR.
Yeah.
And his career might be over at this point, by the way. I think it probably is.
Trent Williams. Trent Williams ended his career.
Yeah.
Took him, and in the block saw another Cowboy player coming up, and he took him. He's so strong as Trent. This just shows you his power, and just throws Van Der Esch into the other Cowboy player, and snap goes the wishbone on the neck, I guess, and that was that. But yeah, it looks like that very well may become the case. Brutal.
But they're getting good snaps out of Damone Clark, who was I remember talking about him with you in the draft a couple years ago. He was the guy who might have had a career-ending injury near the end of his LSU career, and they drafted him to kind of stash him, and it's paying off so far.
And if I do remember correctly, Brendan, he went in the later rounds, and you and I were both advocating for, look, yeah, it's a risk. I think I remember this conversation because I thought we talked a lot about him, and I feel like I remember saying, it's a risk going for this guy, but you're taking the 5th round risk on him. You're not taking the 2nd, 3rd round flyer risk on him. Why not do that if he's going to drop that far to you in the draft as a guy you can grab like that to stash away, noting you're going to need to deal with the linebackers down the line? Wasn't that a conversation I thought we had with that?
Absolutely. I that was the one thing I didn't like about our draft that year. We did nothing to address inside linebacker. I think we could have taken Damone Clark instead of Tyreek Smith. I think that was the decision that we had at that pick.
Oh man, it was all the way to 7th, huh? Yeah,
No. It was Tyreek Smith was a 5th.
6. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, you're right. Okay.
Mhm.
So there you do it. And this just showed, and the reason I bring it up, not to pat us on the back on this one, Brendan, but also to tell the audience when, me and Brendan are going to be looking in the future at some of these kind of prospects in this draft about what you weight and how you weight it. You should take risks on these guys at the end if you got the high upside there, because the high upside doesn't always exist or often exist when you get into these later reaches of the draft. You are really picking through at times the dregs.
And to talk more about this defense beyond just the superstars like the Parsons, and I feel I don't know if Bland is a superstar, but he's certainly got that reputation right now because every week he's putting a new highlight up. He might be, honestly. PFF thinks he's the best corner in football at the moment, so maybe.
He's been very good, and he does great stuff out of zone. The Cowboys, they love to run a lot of the off coverage principles that Carroll established. It's like Quinn's come from Carroll's defense, but he's made all these little modifications in it, which is the ability to give these corners time, I feel like, to read the route concepts. And if they feel like they're getting an out route on off coverage, which has been, of course, a big kind of difficulty for our defense when we're in cover 3 to stop those or in cutting routes, because your guys are just trying to stay on top. Well, that's something where in a lot of Bland's pick sixes, he's jumping. The reason he's getting the pick sixes is you got a guy running out route, cornerback jumps the out route, everybody on the field's over here, and all he's dealing with now is a quarterback to get it to the house.
Yeah.
But it gets set up at the head of it by having now a defense with an ability to say, you're going to start out on top. We want you thinking about playing up on top. But I feel like what Dan does is he says, I don't want you to play on top as the end all be all. You know what I mean? Like that you can never get beat on anything. I also think he builds into a little bit, just watching some of the film, to these guys of giving them a chance to be a little more aggressive with it. And with Bland, he's taken that opportunity and really feeling those routes when they're coming. He's just got a kind of an innate instinctive feel for knowing when that out route play is coming, and he's got the hands and the juice to get it back. And he's like a freaking ball carrier. He's like a running back when he's got the ball in his hands after the catch.
And I said this yesterday, and I'll say it again. And we all we do is run out routes on offense. So Bland is very excited about this game. And if we come with that kind of a game plan, he's going to get one. Like I don't have any doubt about it.
I'm worried about it this week as well. He's going to definitely be sitting there licking his chops, waiting for that route to come. And this would be a great week to utilize I've said it for a couple of weeks now, Brendan. We've yet to run one this year, a sluggo route. Give me a slant and go. Give me an out route and go. So you go dun, and you have Lockett's a master at this. He does bump up and then pitter patters the steps, gives a little bit of arch of the shoulders like he's going to the out route, and then just cooks it right back upfield. The quarterback adds a little pump fake on the out route, gets the corner to completely buy in, and then you nail him right up over the top. I don't know why we haven't, and probably some of the pass protection issues is why we haven't tried to run it, because you do need to have your pass protection hold on for those kind of plays, right? It is a long developing one. But
well, guess who's back this week to help with that?
there we go, Lucas. Help us get there this week. And so I would try to, if I could go to something like that this week, I would definitely try to make a couple of those calls, take advantage of Duran's aggressiveness out there on the corner position.
But that front seven also has DeMarcus Lawrence, who is playing great this year. And he's a guy who's been kind of on the fringe for a few years now, and whether or not the Cowboys even want to keep him. And he's really found himself in this defense lately. And one of their young defensive linemen, Odigizua, who has one of the most fun names in football, and he's also been really good this year. So it's not just all about Parsons. So this whole offensive line is going to get tested, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean they've built a defense that's got star power to it. It's got depth with it. Their line can rotate off the edge a lot. They can really kind of move different guys through. As we said, Mozzie Smith struggling to get some snaps in here. Partly is him being a little bit underwhelming, I think, but also partly is because they like what they've also had there in place too, to have him build in around that. So, you're not going to have a lot of weak link spots on this defense that you can go after. They're structurally sound across the board. And in Lawrence, you're right. You got a guy who's kind of having a career revival season a little bit in his overall level of play, both being a really good run defender and still bringing a good amount of pass rush into bear, and makes them hard to deal with, because you can't just chip Micah all day. You can't just go, let's eliminate Micah and we'll be fine. No, you got the rest of the line, and they don't have to blitz necessarily to generate pressure.
And the only other parts of the defense that we haven't really addressed would be what they're doing at safety with Hooker. What's his first name? Malik Hooker, I think it is.
Malik Hooker.
And Jaron Curse and Donovan Wilson. it's a pretty impressive group for a collection of players that Dan Quinn kind of had to put together on the cheap. They didn't have a lot of blue chip money or picks to spend on the back end of their defense, and I actually think they get really good stuff out of them.
They do. And I've always been a long fan of Malik Hooker going back to his days coming out of Ohio State. A former guy was picked in the 15th in the first round, so which is high for a safety, of course. Ball skills. You got to worry about with this guy. I mean, he can one hand stab it. He can jump up in the air and high point it like a receiver. And he's got, I think he's had some major injuries at times through his career, probably reduced a little bit of some of he had some definite ability to really go sideline to sideline at center, back in center field. But he is, I like watching him. I always have it's always good tape turning him on, seeing what he's up to. And he fits that scheme so very well. I loved him here for Seattle as a possibility. Knew we had no chance in the draft to get him, but just, that was a guy that I was definitely gravitating towards in the draft.
And yeah, it's one of the best defenses in football. You've got what, the Niners and the Cowboys, and who else is up there?
Maybe the Eagles defense. They're having a little bit of a dip, but I don't know if Ravens.
Oh yeah, Ravens.
I would
Ravens
put
are
the
up there.
Ravens above this defense too, by the way.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. The Eagles secondary has had a lot of issues this year, mostly injury related, but I think they're actually ranked right near the middle of the league in terms of points allowed.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd probably put them above the Eagles, that's for sure. But I would put the Ravens. I would stick the Ravens ahead of them. Probably the Chiefs, maybe ahead of this group.
So run to the edge, sluggo routes, and anything else on your mind on how we do this, how we pull this off?
I think this might be the week you got to try to unveil a little bit of trickery to get some manufacture from your offense here. Let's try to steal maybe a play through. When you catch them in press, they like to mix it in just to kind of offset the off coverage. I don't know that they're guys on the edge. I'd like Stephon Gilmore's having an okay season. You know, he's getting long in the tooth, but he's still hanging in there solidly. But I don't think I like him as much when they have to press. And if Geno gets a look of a press and does get an ability to hit a DK over the top or hit a Tyler over the top, take that shot. I know we've taken a lot of 9 routes here over the last few weeks, but that is something that they just don't do. The receivers really slide off their press fast and seem to gain a lot of separation. And then it's really seems to be built on, they call that as just a route disruptor, where they're thinking the quarterback's on a timing route and that's what they're throwing off. And so when you do get them with the 9 is the counter to it, the 9 route, that's when it does have a little bit of an opening there. But of course, with Dan, he's always going to bare minimum keep a single high safety back there. So you will still have a guy over the top. You have to fit it in, get one of those honey hole shots. But if you can do that from Geno's perspective, that can be a place you can steal some quick yards. I think it's going to be tough sailing to try to run the ball this week if they're going to, because I think they like to hammer the inside run too much, and the Cowboys do too much before even playing Seattle, like I've told you about certain opponents where you can just feel the amoeba fluxes to the middle of the offense post snap so often watching the tape. It's the same thing with the Cowboys. They kind of do that naturally with teams anyway, where just always is sort of just like a black hole is sucking the defensive players into the A and B gaps after the play when they sense it's a run. Obviously, when it's a pass, it's different, but when you sense the run, they just naturally flow to that place. That's why that outside stuff opens up. You get the guys trying to come in, and then you can kind of get them out the back door there where there's nobody guarding the gates.
Well, Geno was a full participant all week in practice, so he should at least be in the right condition to maybe hit a throw like that.
Hopefully so. And they took plenty of those shots last week. So, you know, he's still at least willing to make those throws wherever his arm injury's at.
So, got a couple of messages here. We got Promise with the member for 3 months on the channel. Thank you. I'm going to the game tomorrow night. Hope for a W. Well, that's awesome. The right road game to go to, I think, in Cowboy Stadium.
Yeah. Hopefully good tickets. I've seen some places in that stadium where you're up in you're about 25,000 feet. You know what I'm saying? So,
do they have a sponsor? Do they have like a company that?
I don't think they do.
Yeah, they must be the only ones then, because everybody, like Three Rivers Stadium has changed to whatever it's changed to, and it's not called the Boston Garden anymore. It's the TD Garden.
Ugh, I hate that stuff. No, they did. Jerry's not turning down money. AT&T Stadium.
Right. Okay. I forgot about that. AT&T. All right. Well, that's too bad. I was going to give them credit for something, but now I guess I can.
Jerry's World is a lost opportunity on that one. Should have been
Yeah.
Jerry's World. I mean, that's
Hmm.
for a man with the ego that he's got. You got to figure that it had to be tempting. I bet he had to be talked out of it.
Yeah. And just have some company out there change their name to Jerry, and it would have been like it could have been like a small company nobody knows about.
That's right. That's right. No, it's not. It has no connection. All right, it's just its own company. All right, we like them. They're real good, solid folk. And it happens to say Jerry's my name. I know. I bet the stadium is mine. I did that.
Yeah. So that and the Vegas stadium got to be the stadiums to go to if you're going to go to a road game, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I'd love to hear some stories promise about how it is in there. How's the food? How do they do it? How's it different than what we get in our stadium a little bit? What's
Yeah.
their? I'm
I
guessing a lot
know
of.
the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is the Falcons, has done a thing where the food is incredibly cheap
Oof.
because they figure it well, not cheaply made, like cheap
Oh,
cost.
okay.
Because they figure if you're paying all that money to get in the stadium, we should at least take care of you once you're in there. Like you
Smart.
can get like everything just costs a couple of bucks.
What do you think about the
Now,
food in the stadium in Seattle?
well, it is expensive like every other stadium out there, but I do know T-Mobile, the Mariners stadium, is known as having the best food in baseball. I don't know
Mm,
about the Seahawks, but I believe that the Mariners food is considered number one. Now, I think that has more to do with the variety that they offer. Like, you
yeah.
can get the crickets or whatever, or you can eat the, I don't know, live squid. I don't know what they're doing these
Uh,
days.
that's what I was gonna say. That's what people are giving them the thing on the not on the menu for the T-Mobile. It's a bunch of weird stuff nobody wants to eat, and so they just or like there's just a kitschy little small section of people that eat it like a meme or something. Like they needed, in my opinion, both in Mariners and like let's get some good real food back in there. Okay, let's get some good rib sticking food. That's what you want on game day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Octopus. It's like, here, here's some calamari with your baseball. Oh my god.
I agree. I agree. But we do have the audience for that kind of stuff. We
I
do.
know.
I will say that the Pacific Northwest is people who will appreciate that stuff more than, say, I don't know, Texas.
You're right. I'm a picky bastard when it comes to food too, so that doesn't
Yeah.
help matters.
Yeah. I'm a picky eater too. I get it. I would never, ever eat crickets or whatever. That's not
No,
happening.
no, no. They're trying to throw that stuff in our food supply right now. I'm like, no, no. We're not going to label it. What do you guys think? Can we just pass that?
Mhm. Did you ever see Snowpiercer?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember when they get to
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah, the machines. I watched it a couple of weeks ago. Actually, the big machines going in the crickets are just getting churned into. It comes on these little blocks. And it's like, and it's not. They're literally trying to. They're going to get legislation passed, and it's going to be like, not take this in a weird direction. But like, and they won't label it. Like they
yeah.
won't. They'll call it like carcinickety or something as an ingredient on the bag. Like, what's carcinickety? And it's like that's
Uh-huh.
ant legs. That's what that is.
Yeah. Not great. Not great.
No, not good.
But have fun, promise.
I hear the insect burgers in Russia are huge.
Uh, I mean, didn't they used to put like sawdust in food when they were trying to like fill out food?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Well, I'd rather eat sawdust than insects, I think.
I think I might too. At least that just passes through you. Got no. Who knows if we can even digest this instinct stuff? Even our ancestors were like, "No, are you crazy? We got the meat here."
Let's see here. Nothing but silicone. Thank you for the 4.99. Brendan, I need you to get that butt to Vegas. Please help the Huskies win. Inspire them, please. So both the Seahawks and Huskies are 9-point underdogs right now, I think.
Oh, 9 points for the Huskies, huh?
Yeah. So who do you think is more likely to win? The Seahawks or the Huskies?
Oh, this is easy. Huskies.
Yeah, you think? I mean, I'll tell you, as somebody who watches every game and has been following this closely, it does not feel good right now. Like Oregon has ascended to a new plane of existence since we beat them. They are like they look like the best team in the country, pretty much. It's like I can't believe my team is 12-0 and I still expect them to get boat raced on Friday. I really do.
Well, it's you're right about Oregon being a good team, though. I mean, that's and it does matter what we've been talking about our Hawks all year. We got to be consistent in how we apply it, even on a college football field. I think it works this way too, where every season is a story, but it's a story and it's in the progression of what your team does. And you started training camp trying to how is this going to come together? We got this on paper, that's going to be on paper, and then you try your first thing, it doesn't work, or it does work, and then you keep reinforcing it and kind of getting it, and then you're hoping you're getting better and better, and you can keep the health going, and then you're this thing at the end of the year. And the ideal is to get to your strongest strength by the end of the year, and that you're at your best development. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way, though. Sometimes you've played your best football in September, and I think that's what you're probably would. I mean, once you say that's probably a little bit of maybe the Warriors, that is a little the case with Huskies, whereas the Oregon's playing their best ball, and that it's a pretty even field between the two as far as the talent goes. And
Yeah. I mean, the narrative right now is that Penix is playing hurt, and he's been playing hurt since the Oregon game because he hasn't
mm,
been the same. And I don't know what else it could be. Like, he's just a different player lately. And after one game, they said, oh, he was sick. And then after the Apple Cup, I thought he was like puking in a trash can right after the game was over. So I was like, oh, I guess he's sick again. But now they're saying, no, he wasn't sick. He just couldn't watch the field goal. He didn't want to watch it. So he stuck his head in an equipment box or whatever. But yeah, he's not the same. And unlike a team like Oregon that is really, really well rounded, if we don't get a big game from Penix, we have no chance.
yeah, you need him to throw and throw a lot in this game. So I can understand the reticence of the Huskies not being necessarily a favorite. 9 points is a lot. But I do still think that they have a better chance than where Seattle is, just because Seattle right now just doesn't have any mojo they're working with here. At least the Huskies got the momentum of winning recent games, winning some tough games, having to rise when everything chips were down. We don't have any of that resiliency that we're necessarily seeing back on the other side of this from our pro club. Maybe they'll show that this week, but yeah, it ain't looking good for either one, probably, I guess, on paper.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if the Huskies win this game, I just need to shut up about everything, I guess, because at that point, I guess the only thing you can say is that this Huskies team just turns it on just enough to beat every opponent they play, no matter who it is. Because if we beat this Oregon team on a neutral field, then nobody can say anything about any of the struggles we've had the rest of the way.
I think there's something to be said for Kellen DeBoer's ability to manage these games as well. When you track back the stat of how many games they've won over the last 2 years, and you factor in that he walked into the door, weren't they like winless the previous year that he walked in, something like that?
They
You know,
won a couple, but it was a terrible team. That was the Jimmy
yeah,
Lake year.
yeah,
Where what was it? He punched a player and got fired because of that.
yeah. So yeah, I do believe there are coaches that come in that have that sort of, this was a thing that like Lou Piniella was like this in baseball, where there are those coaches that come in that seem to have a little bit of a feel for it's not game management in the bad way we would mean it sometimes, which is then the I'm going to play it safe kind of thing of role of it, but in just the way to kind of manage the game going through with what you're doing to give your team an added advantage to what they're doing on the field that I think Kellen brings into play, which is how they've been able in part to get through these um, tougher, tighter matchups, and that he knows how to manage the game. He's a very smart coach on that. That I think that he brings that into play too. But they're going to be dogfights all the way down, no doubt about it. This is not going to be a tough. This is going to be a hard fight.
Mhm. All right, but thank you, nothing but silicone. I'm gonna live stream the game on Friday. I will tell you that. I'm gonna do what I can, but that Oregon team, man, like they are peaking. It seems like, and we are not.
Yeah. Luckily, though, it's just one game. That's the nice part about this. It ain't a series of games. It's one game, and the ball can bounce funny, and things can go weird in these kind of games. You never know. A couple calls this way, a couple calls that way. So they've at least put themselves in this position, Brendan, which is so exciting to see from my perspective too, as a guy that has definitely been rooting for the Huskies throughout my life, and to see where the program went in the mid '90s. I got to go through it there in '90. I mean, you just that team and what it was. You talk about having a team at this time of year being undefeated that you had no questions about, that you had no worries about, that you knew was going to go out and absolutely stomp whatever was in front of them. That 1990s Husky squad was that. There was no flaws to that team. There was no ability to do anything against that team at all.
Mhm.
And that you got that torn down a bit by what the Pac-12 kind of did at that time, I felt like, which was unjust. And then it's taken so long to really pull yourself back. I mean, Peterson took them a long way, I think, to getting them up off the mat from where they were. But it's great to see them back on their way here.
Pierce, thank you for the $4.99. I have front row seats to the game tomorrow. Go Hawks.
Let's go.
Well, you'd think that front row seats would be good seats, right? You don't have to
Oh
worry
yeah.
too much about getting stuck behind a pillar or something.
Oh no, Jersey. Hey, look, they're gonna pay to get down there. I want them to see the field. Okay, I want them to smell the sweat. I want the blood to splatter on their face after a hit. Get them down there now. Get them close.
Yeah. So, I mean, that must have been expensive. So have fun. Have fun.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Yeah, cheer them on, and hopefully the Cowboy fans don't try to punch you. Some of these stadiums, Pierce. I get worried from my Hawk brethren going. I don't worry, but we have to worry about in LA. I mean, it's like LA. Who even cares? But you got to go in some of these other stadiums with some of these more vigilant fans, and you can find yourself ducking hooks and uppercuts.
Yeah, these audience people are getting a little crazy this year. Like, you remember the thing with the concerts? All the fans would like throw stuff at the performers. Like, remember they were throwing water bottles at like Taylor Swift and stuff, and there was this big thing about how like a couple years ago in the NBA playoffs, they're throwing stuff at Russell Westbrook, and like there was a conversation people had about like, okay, these guys forgot fan decorum during COVID because they weren't able to go into any sporting events.
Totally. No, it's definitely, and I've seen more. It stopped a little bit now. It seems like maybe the NFL kind of pushed down on this because there were some early videos coming out the early part of this year. It was like every stadium, there was a fight every week somewhere breaking out, and like brutal fights, like guys getting thrown down the stairs and punched to the point where they're you're going, there's children here, guys. God, chill. What are we arguing about? How did we get to here?
Yeah. And Promise, thank you for becoming a member on Brandon's side. This is the Hawks Nest.
Let's go, Promise.
So
thank you, man.
Thank you. Welcome aboard over there as well. Now a member on both ends.
Appreciate you.
Okay, so now let's turn the page over to the Cowboys offense, which is doing very well lately. It's in terms of performance up there with their defense. And it's all centered around a quarterback who has been by far the best quarterback in the league for like the last 2 months against all odds. And probably when a lot of people were leaving him for dead, every advanced metric and number you can use tells you that Dakota Rain Prescott is playing at an MVP clip for the Dallas Cowboys.
He is, as you say, that's where you have to sort of start with this offense is that a guy that was, I think the Cowboy fan base has kind of ever so slowly been souring on a little bit in recent years, especially after the contract extension. I get Cowboy fans in my chat often that'll come in, and it seems like they're always uniformly sort of anti-Dak. But he is coming out there and giving you this season 70% completion percentage, the most highly ranked quarterback by PFF, which I think is saying something because there's a lot of competition for that mark. 8 yard per attempt average when he's throwing it. His accuracy has been completely on spot. Decision making through the roof has been great. We talked about the fact maybe you haven't had the greatest of challenges of defenses you've had to go through, but he could play only who he has to play, and he's done a great job against those teams that he has played. So there's nothing you can pick apart in Dak's game and in how he's going right now that's really anything that's a detriment in how he's playing. He seems to have really gotten a real firm control, maybe reaching that spot as a quarterback, Brendan, here, as he's starting to touch into his 30s here, that spot that I talked to you about a lot of that. You get your sort of your doctorate spot of things, right? Where you've seen all the blitzes, you've been in the league 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and you've had a chance to really be immersed in everything. And so that you have almost kind of that master's control of things, at least from the neck up. Now, this doesn't necessarily, you have limitations and stuff as your arm talent or whatever. That's another thing. But this is what can help you then suddenly look and make you at your best as you are going into theoretically kind of your physical prime too.
Yeah. He's not the only quarterback that's played bad competition lately. I mean, there are plenty of games that these guys play against bad teams, and he's standing out even among them. So I do think it's mostly for real. And I've always been a Dak Prescott fan. I've liked him ever since he came into the league, really. But after the injury, it seemed like he was never going to get it back. And even after last season, I kind of questioned, like, that injury really robbed him of his mobility. And without that, he's just kind of another quarterback, just kind of whatever. and somehow, some way, he's gotten it back. And I actually like Dak, so I think it's kind of cool. But yeah, he's playing. He may end up being the league MVP this year because I'll tell you, there isn't really a lot going on with the usual suspects. Like Mahomes is not going to win MVP. Burrow barely played this year. Tua's leveled off. I still think he could. Lamar could. I don't think Purdy's a serious candidate anymore. Jalen Hurts is turning the ball over too much. It's going to be a weird MVP race this year.
How about Tyreek?
Yeah, Tyreek. I don't. God, they've never given it to a receiver before. I don't see them doing it now.
That's true. What is he? Let's see what he's on pace for. I mean, he's on pace for over 2,000 yards. If
Yeah.
he clips that, it might be hard to not give it to him if that's the case. But I agree, they don't give it to those guys typically. So
Yeah, I don't think they've ever given it to a receiver. Like, remember the Steve Smith year, the Triple Crown year? I
did
don't
they
even
not?
think.
They didn't do it. They didn't give it to Randy when he got the 22 receiving touchdowns.
No, that was Brady. That was the Brady
Oh, okay,
year.
Brady year. Yeah, I guess that's right. I can't think of Jerry Rice ever winning it.
No, he
So
didn't. So, I mean, a kicker's won MVP. A place kicker won MVP one time, but not wide receiver.
it's brutal, odd.
Huh? And it took a little while for things to get going, but that offense is really humming now with Brandon Cooks. We talk about this guy sometimes as being like the most underwhelming future Hall of Famer of all time. Like we've talked about how this guy is going to have elite numbers when he retires.
Mm-hmm.
But he took a while to find his footing in Dallas, but he's coming along now. And with him, Lamb, and Gallup, that offense has become kind of like what it was a couple years ago when they had Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb. It's just kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's a lot like it. I think they're probably a little more dynamic with Cooper in there. I think with Cooks, he's definitely only 30 years old, but played so much football. I don't think he's necessarily quite where he once was. And Gallup, I don't know if he's ever kind of fully always come all the way back from that ACL that he suffered a couple of years ago. But they're solid. And they can get open on their own. They can take advantage if you're going to try to double up on CD Lamb. Lamb is really what makes it tick, though. 104 targets his way versus 48 and 46 respectively for Cooks and Gallup. And so he is the guy that Dak is going to feed over and over again. Going to be interesting to see how Seattle plays this, of course, because we have our typical, we'll stay into our defense, do what we do, but this might be a game where you try to maybe slant a little bit more coverage Lamb's way, theoretically speaking. I don't think we will, but if I was to look at those numbers of targets and whatnot and how much he is getting worked, I might go, you maybe want to lean a little his way because Dak is really, really leaning his way. In times of trouble, he's going to CD.
So, how would you play this situation? You've got Woolen, you've got Brown, you've got Witherspoon. How are you making it work with this triplet of receivers?
I think that I would love to probably this would be a game it would I hate having corners travel with receivers, but I would love to have Witherspoon travel with Lamb in this game. There's no way again we would ever do that. I think that you're just going to have to play how you play your style, which is to keep the corners where you keep them. And if Witherspoon base defense, he's out there, three wide receivers, nickels, you're going to put him into the slot. And I think you just try to have your guys trust on the outside that they can hold up between Trey Brown and Tariq Woolen out there. I don't think Tariq is going to get as tested this week. Part of the reason why I think the team wasn't hesitant in saying he was going to be starting this week, even with the shoulder injury, regardless of whether he was benched last week for the shoulder or was just pure play. The shoulder wouldn't get better overnight over a week, right? On a week from a Thursday night game to this one. So it's the shoulder is probably still there bothering him, but they're looking at this rushing attack from Dallas and going, I think we don't like, unlike you said in the post game yesterday, where we needed the extra body of Jackson to help out in tackling Mike Jackson. And that's a big part of the onus there to move him on the field last week and move Tariq off. This week, maybe you don't need that as much. And you can just kind of trust in Tariq to the rest of the defense to hold up and do their job against this ground game. And not that the Cowboys ground game is bad, but just it's not as dynamic as when you got McCaffrey who can one missed tackle, go house it for 70 yards.
Oh yeah, it's not even close. In fact, I think if the Cowboys have a weakness right now at all, it's probably the fact that they have such a mediocre running game. They are and a mediocre running back. They got Pollard, who's just okay, But to me, that is one area where they fall a little bit short compared to the true contenders.
Yeah, I don't think that the running back is as dynamic a position. Enrico Dowdle, the number twos by PFF standards, been the better, more efficient back in his decision making back there versus Pollard. Pollard had that injury last year. He seemed to me last year to be a little more dynamic and quick, bursty than I watch on tape with him. He's got a little bit of it looks a little like slow down city a bit. Not like he's in mud or in sand, but just that
Not
it's
like
not,
Zeke. He's
yeah,
not Zeke level.
Not Zeke, like where the belly's flopping over the top of the belt and he's just out there eating a donut saying, which hole? Which hole you want me to go to? But that's the place where maybe we can be okay here, as these guys can lock their guys up and really concentrate on that and not as much on like we've had to the last week or against Baltimore. Really, corners got to get in there and really need you for the tackling too, because the ground game is going to be a problem. It's weird though a little bit where McCarthy takes over for Kellen Moore. It's because Kellen Moore in Dallas doesn't want to commit to the ground game enough to McCarthy's liking, so he takes over the ground game now, and they're still passing way more than they're running, and the passing is still the most efficient part of the offense.
Yeah, that is true, and that is why I still think they need something else. Like, to me, if there was a team that should have traded for Derrick Henry, this may have been
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I agreed. I would have if I them said, I like where we're at, but we could use one more. And then you move Pollard to the number 2 role, and now maybe Pollard's a little more effective without having to be the bell cow taking all the carries kind of back.
Offensive line for Dallas, obvious weak spot at right tackle. Terrence Steele has been kind of a terror for them this year. They just paid him too, so not good. Not a good expenditure of resources, but that left side is still locked down with the Smith brothers.
How about Tyron Smith, man? I mean, a guy that for years has been just wearing down and body falling apart in every way, shape, and form. I don't know. I don't know if he's got like 7 fused discs in that back at this point, Brendan. But the guy's been through every injury you can have in football. And you think that he's done and he's played for, it seems like 13, 14 years, and the body's going to be worn down, but he's out here balling at the left tackle position here. I don't know what he's got to be, age 30, 35, something like that. He's starting to get up there. I know that. Been very impressed that he's been a guy for them that's still been out there playing as well as he has. Just not just the age, but how much he was battered for years, where he could barely play 5 or 6 games, and yet he's out there every week getting it done.
Yeah, I mean his time is definitely running out, but when he plays, he is absolutely fantastic. And the other Smith, the what's his name, Tyler Smith, has been good too.
Tyler Smith is really good, and Tyler Smith is also a guy that, for those that are going to be following our draft coverage, we're really going to be getting on board with the thought process of taking a tackle and moving them to left guard. You're going to see me and Brendan really gravitate, not just on the natural guards, but to these kind of guards to get that athletic ability in there like you can get. And that was a guy that was, remember Brendan coming out, was a tackle coming out, and people were like, well, we think you can move him inside, but how is he really going to move inside? And you could see how it was going to work well with some of his nastiness for the tackle position and some of the doggedness that he brought, that you kick him inside, that's going to work really well with his ability to move in space. And he's only 22 years old. The kid is absolutely, though, been their best offensive lineman, even with Tyron doing what he's doing. He's been the best offensive lineman for him, Tyler Smith.
Yeah, and of course, Zach Martin still grinding away over on the other side.
The old gray beard. Old gray beard still chopping that wood, getting it done.
Future Hall of Famer?
Future Hall of Famer, yep.
And of course, Tyler Biadasz, who's been okay, just fine.
He's fine. He's functional.
So if you're looking to get something done, it's probably on Mr. Steele over on the right side there, and that's about it.
Twitchy edge rushers give Steele problems so far this year watching the tape. So it's, which he plays right side Brendan. So of course you typically in years past get your bull rushers coming off that right side. But the twitchy guys, the ones that are going to give him problems. So you can get after him with that. Tyron, as well as he is playing, is definitely a guy still not as fleet of foot. So both sides, with the athletic rushers that the Seahawks bring to bear here, at least in Taylor and Maffei's case, you have guys that I think can challenge these guys from a mobility standpoint to stay with them up front.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, their tight end spot's just kind of an afterthought right now. Not a lot to say.
Ferguson's coming along. Ferguson's coming along for them. I like what he's doing for them right now. He shows up on tape and he's got great ball skills. a natural receiver there at the tight end position where he's always working his way back to the ball. You think you got him stocked up in coverage, but he does that thing you always try to have a hard time sometimes teaching receivers to do, because they'll come out of their route, they'll break, and then they'll get a little stilted on staying on their line. And what coaches want them to do instead is come back to the ball, come back to the throw. Give yourself a couple yards back so that corner can't rally back up to it. And he does a good job of picking a lot of balls out where even if he doesn't have that separation, he'll come back to the ball to go grab it. And he's got some sticky hands, man. He's what was he at? He was at 40 receptions on 58 targets, 4 touchdown catches. So he's been an efficient pass catcher and a guy that I think is on the rise for them. I think they picked him wasn't he a second, third round guy from Michigan or something? Wisconsin, Michigan. The what?
Schoonmaker? Are you talking about Schoonmaker, the rookie? He's
No,
the backup tight end.
That's the backup tight end, I think.
I think he was the second round pick from Michigan.
Yeah, this is the 4th round from Wisconsin a couple of years ago.
All right, they like the Midwest tight ends, I guess.
Well, they like that Wisconsin. They got Biadish in there. Yeah, they go for when they want their guys in there. That's where they're looking. So he's a good player, though.
So I guess it's at least a little bit of a break for the run defense that really got pushed around against the 49ers, but it's going to be all about how we can match up with their receivers with our secondary. We have the players to do it. I mean, we did a great job against the Bengals a couple months ago. It's still the same cornerbacks, still the same players. So it's possible, but is it going to happen? What do we got to do to make this actually happen?
Yeah, I think it's you've got the corners, which is the best part of this. Is not often teams are going to have 3 corners they can throw that can kind of cover like our guys can cover, which does hopefully slow down what they want to do. And in Lamb's case, he likes to bounce inside, a lot. So that does fit again into what we wanted to have happen, because now Witherspoon doesn't have to travel. You're just going right to Witherspoon. And that to me is going to be a battle where I think Witherspoon can give and every much as you're going to get. And so that would be to number one would be a nice way to go with it. Obviously we've been talking about for weeks, maybe trying to be a little bit more aggressive in our defensive stylings, a little bit more of the press coverage, maybe a little bit more of the stack fronts, dare I say, maybe some actual 6-man blitzes. I don't think we're going to see that at this point. So I don't think I should call for it much anymore, because I just don't think it's coming into play, but it doesn't mean that it isn't something that I think, could help you in this game, because I'm just not certain with their offensive line, even with the right side and steal. I don't know that with your pass rush showing in recent weeks, you've been unable to generate much real consistent pressure, that just trusting the front 4 against this offensive line is going to allow them to create any kind of pressure that way, that they're going to have to try to manufacture some of it through this game, I would think. But again, I feel like I'm barking at clouds with this one a little bit, because, I don't know if that's even in the team's real possible list of things we will go to as far as solutions are concerned.
Yeah. And to my knowledge, Dak does not have any particularly strong proclivity for performing well versus zone or man. I think he actually does really well against both. This is not a Brock Purdy situation where it's very clear you need to play man on him. I think Dak is more, I'll do it either way. It's more just a matter of you need to play really well against him.
Yeah. No, I think that's an accurate summation of it. I think he's a guy that if you do take away their ground game and make him pass happy, and they can't call about the ground game at all, really, there's a way there to kind of eventually get him to make a throw or two throughout the course of the game that you can then pick off. Think back, for instance, Brendan, to the last Cowboys game we played. That was kind of the case where now he threw for a buttload of yards in that game against us, and they scored a lot of points, but you also got a couple of interceptions. A couple of years prior to that, they're playing in Seattle again. You have Earl Thomas. That was one of Earl's last. That was the one that he went to their locker room, I think, afterwards, where he had the 2 interceptions in that game. So if you do get him pass happy, he'll throw you a couple over the course of the game at that point. And that's maybe a bit of the pathway they're looking at here, is that we'll trust that when he does throw a couple, we'll pick him off and take him the other way. But that does require him to be in a more of a high volume place of mind, which is, of course, maybe the whole key to all this, Brennan, because it's at the head of what the Cowboys wanted to do offensively at the beginning of this show was, let's get less of these attempts off Dak, probably less attempts off Dak, with the understanding that the too many attempts lead to these inevitable interceptions throughout the course of a game. We've got to get to more of that balanced state of mind.
Let's see here. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5. Not looking forward to getting boat raced against the most overrated coach in the league and a team I actively make fun of. I've kind of laid off Mike McCarthy lately. I think he's actually doing a good job with this Cowboys team over the last few years, and I think you can see that giving him more power this year has been a positive development.
Yeah, I'm not a big Mike McCarthy guy myself. I've heard too many other little stories from him, and I don't like he lied in his press conference. Told that he lied about to Jerry Jones the press conference, and there's rumors of him and Packers getting massages rather than it. Um, yeah, I'm not as big on him, but yeah, I mean it's gonna be rough if we got to be on national television again here. Everybody watching this game again and watching back to back weeks getting throttled. It won't be great. It won't be great, but that's the season we kind of do find ourselves in. And I don't think I feel like the team's going to find a way to fight. This is a different opponent than the Niners, as Brendan was saying. So I just don't think they're going to be able to do to us what the Niners or Ravens were able to do, because I don't think that they're on that same level.
Right. I a lot of Seahawks fans take these Cowboys games personally, more so than other teams in the NFC, I think. I've gotten a lot of comments of like, "Oh, please don't let us lose to this team. I hate losing to this team." So there is a little bit of that going around. So I get it.
Well, there's Cowboys do have a very high contingent of inseparable friends that I'm sure many Hawk fans have come across over the years.
Yeah, it feels like there aren't as. I mean, I guess with every year that goes by, they start to fade away a little bit because they have this long record of futility now.
It's true. It's been, they go through Super Bowls and like, yeah, 30, how many years? 40 years ago? What was it? 50 years ago? So
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to play football as a team for coming up on 30 years now without making a conference championship game. It's hard. And they
yeah,
pulled it off. Like I think the Lions have done it, and maybe one other team in the NFC has done it.
yeah. No, it's an achievement. It's Jerry's achievement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So anything else to say about this Cowboys offense that stands out to you? We covered pretty much all the positional stuff and the things they like to do. Anything else?
No, I think that that's pretty much where they are. They're gonna try to be balanced as they can. They're not trying to necessarily take the big shots over the top on you. They'll be patient if you force them into being patient. They're not Dak. Part of that why he's having this MVP season is he's playing within himself, not in a game manager way, but in a I'll find the weakness on a play of where you're at. I'll go after it. So I think that the team in a lot of ways, Brendan, is just going to try to fit to what they do naturally, which is we're going to protect against the deep ball. We're going to stop the run. And then from there, we'll eventually hope that Dak at some point this game will throw us our picks. Offensively speaking, this is going to be a slog to find points, I think, at times, because the ground game's just not been terribly effective for us. We don't have the Walker to kind of utilize where they might be weak in the ground game. And because where we've been at with our passing attack and lack of willingness to hit maybe the places that they might be susceptible, like the middle of the field and intermediate passes, I'm a little worried with those, how that all kind of fits together for this upcoming matchup a bit. But yeah, that's about all there is really where I see them with offense. It's Dak's running the show right now, and he's running it well. They've got just enough firepower. They got one magazine just enough, but they're not necessarily stocked to the gills.
Yeah, special teams, what the Cowboys have managed to do with Brandon Aubrey is a great example of why that Jason Myers contract was a bad idea. You can just find some random kicker out of nowhere and just get A-plus performance from him, like the Cowboys have with Aubrey. He's super cheap, and he's killing it for him.
Yeah, they've been doing good. I mean, their special teams, Turpin too, is a good returner for them as well. But yeah, that definitely hurts when you watch Aubrey doing what he's doing. Perfect all the way across the board. 5 for 5 on 50+ yarders,
Mm.
and yeah, he's got three missed extra points though. You're not factoring in, Brendan, the money that you got to spend for those guaranteed extra points. That's big. That's huge.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess there have been a couple of games won or lost on the back of extra points.
Yeah.
So the only thing really left to do is well, how do you see this one going down? What do you got?
Whew, well, we've been looking for faith here a little bit this week, Brendan. We've been trying to find some. I don't know if I've done a great job of instilling it myself in the outlook of the team right now coming into this game. I do look at the Cowboys schedule, and I think that the people that say this is not a team that you can measure by this record or where they're at and say this is who they are. There's a little bit of that schedule. I think has been as light as any team has gotten to face through football of the top teams that are in football, of the teams that are considered playoff ready-made teams. There's something to that to me, and versus us that I think has had not necessarily a super hard schedule, but we've got our tests that have come through. And I don't think that means that we win this game. I say all that. I think the strategies we would need to employ to probably have a chance to win this game, I'm not yet convinced we're willing to employ those strategies. I don't know if they would work even in themselves if there was enough at this point where the team's out to get you over the top in this game anyway. But I think we try to still run more of the same. I think that the Cowboys are going to be well prepared for more of the same. And if that occurs, I think that they probably end up beating you by 10 points. So it's to me probably a 2010 game at this point, the way I'd look at it. Maybe even a 27-10, where they'd even pop one more extra touchdown in there. But probably something like that.
I think they're going to keep it close. I do. I think there's some stuff here that you can do against this team. I just don't know if I see the win. I'm going to go with 27-17 Dallas. That feels about right to me. A little bit of stuff to instill a little bit of confidence, but it's not really going to be enough. I don't think it's going to get any people back on the side of, this Seahawks team is going to be okay this year.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope they're able to get the win this week. I am, but if we're trying to analyze this and look at this with, as unbiased eyes as we can and give people the accurate call. It's hard to look at this accurately and say right now we've got some advantage here or there or there. We just don't have anything greatly on paper that, and football is a game of matchups. You look for the thing matchup wise that could supersede the record here. And I don't know that I see that thing necessarily, other than the last time DK Metcalf played Stephon Gilmore, he sunned him up with the Patriots. So, maybe that's the place that we're not looking at as much, even though Gilmore's had a pretty solid year. Maybe DK just tests out those old legs, turns on the 4-3 jets, and we just throw moonballs all day.
Yeah, I mean, it's the JP Lossman offense. Just keep throwing the ball up and hoping you get pass interference.
That's right. Do that underthrow move where you have the guy running deep and then you have the quarterback underthrow it. So the defender just runs into him and you get the PI.
So kind of a shorter show, but there just wasn't really a heck of a lot to say right now. So I think we're just going to call it there. Anything else that you want to go in on?
No, just that I hope, Brendan, that the team eventually this year, if these strategies that they do employ don't work as much, the not blitzing, the hammering A and B gap runs, the no using fly sweep. I mean, we've talked about it. I'm not going to go through all of the points, but that if you look to actual find change, I mean, Brendan, do you feel like they've really changed much of their strategies from week one to week now? I mean, there's some little minor things within them I'm sure we could look at, but overall, it seems like they've kind of run the same kind of attack on both sides of the ball every week for the most part. Would you say that's the same?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so I
think that's clearly the case.
I just look for them to eventually at some point or another, for no other reason than what can it hurt? If you're getting these same results, I mean, maybe they're just thinking it's going to click in here and it'll really lock in. And once it locks in, we'll all see why they've been so committed to making this brand of style of play the way they want to go out there and win football games. But maybe if they could, try some different adjustments in here that are more than just minor adjustments, more than, edging the nose tackle into the B gap on the weak side versus the strong side, more than those little kind of adjustments, but more of an overriding kind of guiding light principle of, let's try to take this a little bit more to these teams a bit in our approach, especially defensively speaking. Would love to see that, but that'll be the part that I guess will be the interesting part for us to follow and watch the rest of the season, Brendan.
All right, so I think that's just going to do it for tonight, guys. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Brandon, thank you for coming on to the show to do this with me like we do every week.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
We will do this again next week, no matter how this game goes tomorrow night. And I know you'll be live streaming it, right? That's your plan?
I will be indeed, yes. I'll be doing a post-game drinking stream, too. So if anybody's up late tomorrow night, we'll be doing post-game having some. Probably might need them after this game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we might. But you know what else we need before the game? You know what we need before the game? You know what we need to do right now? You know what we need to do?
We got to help our team, man. We got to let them know.
Yeah, it's got to be done. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.